We live in a world where man's consciousness of God is rapidly diminishing because he is assuming the role of God. And when you start doing things like modifying the weather, messing with genetic issues, choosing to change things that God never intended to change, you are seeing the beginning of the end. The spirit of Antichrist is in full effect. Should we just talk about all this weather modification stuff that's happening? Yeah. This used to be the type of thing that we would talk about that people would say, you're cuckoo, you're crazy, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. This is, this is science fiction, so on and so forth. How in the world is there a water issue with the second most insanely out of control wildfire in United States history on a piece of land that has 300 inches of rain a year come down?
Yeah, on a tropical island that is...
How does that work?
Yeah, I don't know. I will tell you, I was just there in December, right? I mean, it rains every day. It's, I don't have an answer to that. It's the same reason, well, how, if you heard the story they said about, why they didn't let the sirens go off, right? They kept that down too, which is kind of strange. You go, well, why, what's... They go, well, that's reserved for the tsunami warnings. And I go, I'm thinking to myself, well, listen, if you're in danger, it doesn't matter if it's fire, tsunami, wind, God, whatever, you sound the alarm, right? It doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? Why would they not sound that when all of these people could have been saved, right? Could have been forewarned and forearmed. I'm telling you, man, there's something amiss in all of this, whether it's the fact that you look at buildings that were completely charred to the ground, and I mean flat charred, cars are melted, and then you turn around and look at a tree right beside it that's green and still like not even touched. It just doesn't make any sense. None of it makes sense.
0 sense, bro. And here's the question that I would ask. Do we have any evidence, and I don't know if you looked into this, but is there any evidence of weather modification flights that have been flown over Hawaii? I'm really curious to know.
No, I haven't. I'm actually running the model now to see, just go back to 30 days and see it's still populating, but that's how many there were. I don't see any. No, you know what? I've got weather mod flights in Alaska. We've got them over the Northeast, exactly where you expect. What's really strange, this is the telling sign right here. And this is where you go, okay, something is up. I ran 30 days worth of flight data on the NOAA flights. Okay. And I did that a couple sit reps ago, and I ran it again today, and it's different.
What?
Same 30 days. Yeah.
So wait. So somebody modified the ADS-B database?
Yeah. They do it all the time. They wipe flights out. Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have recordings of the old results by any chance? Well, sure, because you did it on a sit rep.
All right. So I'm going to show you the two different screens. And it's really telling, because it means they're taking stuff out that was there, which is that's your smoking gun, right? When you can look at data and then the data changes. That always tells you. So let me do this. I'm going to share my screen. This is from a sit rep. 8.7 was the recording file. Okay. Notice you've got the NOAA planes that are over the Illinois, Chicago area, kind of Madison, Wisconsin.
And, can you let people know what NOAA is? Because a lot of people might not know who they are.
Yeah, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So they're closely tied to NASA in terms of science stuff. Now, NOAA, they are the folks that have been behind weather modification, all of the programs, committees, anything that's gone before Congress in terms of getting approvals. That's all NOAA setting up weather modification systems, right? They've been doing it, at least from a U.S. perspective. They came public with it around 1973, I think it was, 74 timeframe. So you're talking 51 years ago that they started this weather modification stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so you can see my screen, and you can see my mouse moving. All right. And these are locations. This is what I believe is chemtrailing right here, where they're actually spraying stuff into the sky when they do these back and forths. It's same thing with this back and forth. Same thing here. Now, let me tell you, this is why it gets interesting. If you follow Dutch Sense and you follow me, you know that I talk about from time to time flights that get wiped off the board from going into Guantanamo Bay. But Dutch also talks about the fact that the USGS will actually go back in and delete data. And he's like, look at this, it's gone, right? And it's same thing here, right? Here we are. We've caught them red-handed. We did a big thing on this whole deal about them spraying. In this instance where you see this spot right here, and you see these little tiny ones that are down below at a lower altitude, I'm gonna let this play out for a second. I'll pause it as I'm talking to it. I believe that right there are different altitudes of same thing with this of spraying. Okay. Now you get over to this side, same thing here, spraying. There's a lower altitude one that I went into details about where they actually got caught on camera releasing some pink stuff into the sky. Okay. Now, mind you, this is 30 days worth of data, and I grabbed it up. Most of that was recent. All right. When all of these storms and everything were happening over the Northeast. Okay. But this just gives you a general idea. And remember where these tracks are located. Okay. Because I'm getting ready to go show you the next set of data that I pulled that is 30 days old. It's the last 30 days. All right. Like I said, this stuff is, I back it up a little bit and show you this stuff right here was in the last 7 to 10 days. Okay.
How in the world does that not make everybody sick to their stomach?
Well, that's exactly, yeah. You would think people would go, hey, wait a second. What's going on here? Why is this?
Now this is just the eastern part of the United States, right?
This is where most of the concentration is. Yeah. There's stuff in a few other places, but right now this is the concentration. And this is the same spot where we're having all the weather, right? You may remember it was flooding in Missouri and all kinds of different stuff happening up here on the Northeast. Okay. Now share it again. Now this is in Sky Glass. Okay. And you can see the new data. This is 30 days. So this is over the last 30 days. This is the NASA in my watch list. I have them listed as NASA, but it's NOAA in NASA science. Okay. 80 flights. All right. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to pull it out of the way. Now notice, what are we missing here? Because remember what I just showed you in the last 30 days, all of those flights that were just right here and right up here, they're gone.
Monkey, can I just tell you what like went through my mind when I saw this?
Yeah.
When I saw this, I just thought for a second, wait, no, we're just waiting for his computer to populate this. Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah, no, I wish that was the case. These long strands like this, they're probably spraying. But yeah, the data has changed. So that tells you, there would be no reason for them to go and wipe the previous flight data out unless they were trying to hide something. That's the only reason they would do it.
So we've already established the fact that they are modifying the weather. This is not an issue that should be brought under question by anybody. We know this to be the case. This is not like, this isn't like, wow, this is new. As a matter of fact, you guys may or may not know this. Almost all of you watch Monkey. It's if you all know that based on anything that you've seen Monkey do in the past, he's actually saying, look, guys, these people are not even like hiding it. I remember when Monkey first started watching these weather flights. Look, before he started watching these weather flights, Monkey would tell me all the time, I don't want to hear another question about chemtrails. And I would laugh at him. I don't want to hear it either. That's just crazy. That's just nuts. I don't want to hear any discussion about that. Most people don't know the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail, right? Yeah. And there's a big difference, and there's a whole lot more contrails out there than there are chemtrails for obvious reasons, right? Because of the natural, thing that happens when the jet propulsion does what it does and going through the sky and the mixture of, moisture versus cool and so on and so forth. We don't have to get into the science of that. But let me just simply say this. We avoided that discussion like the plague because it seemed to be such a crazy off the rails discussion. But now we are looking at, like, let me just tell you how blatant some of these things are. We're looking at temporary flight restrictions being created in certain areas to clear the airspace for weather modification purposes. There are TFRs being issued by the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, actually saying, hey, we are clearing this airspace for weather modification purposes.
Yeah. You'll see it all the time when you look up north towards where HARP is located in Alaska, where you'll see the boxes over that area, and it'll be, you know, they'll say high radio frequency stuff. You know, it'll tell you to avoid that area because they're going to be doing something, right? So you do see it over in that general area. The other thing too is I've seen it over in Southeast Asia, where there is a TFR that'll be in play that'll say weather modification. It just tells you straight up. So just to kind of back up just a little bit and talk about the fact that I said originally, I had said, if you go back, I will tell you, you're right. People would talk about chemtrails and I would just kind of roll my eyes and I'd go, okay. So chemtrails, you know, you're talking to a guy, I'm an A&P mechanic by trade, right? That was my original, that's how I cut my teeth. I've worked on these airplanes. I've ripped out the bellies in them. I've done skin jobs, you know, skin repairs, taken out aft lavs and center lavs and worked L1011s and, you know, MD11s and 747. I've worked on everything, right? I've been around those airplanes. And if there was some type of setup in there that had a whole bunch of stuff for spraying chemicals, I would have seen it. So I was always saying, it's contrails 99% of the time. Now, do they do it? Yeah, they do. But then I got my hands on Skyglass and I started digging in, and I had the ability to really dig into the data and look at it. And I watched, as I was going through, I started just keyword searching things that were, I was like, yeah, let me peel the onion on this a little bit, because I hear it a lot. And so I was like, I started finding that, you know, all of a sudden there's these companies that go by Weather Mod LLC, Weather Modification LLC, right? Things of that nature. And I go, okay, wait a minute here. They actually name a company as a Weather Modification LLC. This is strange, man. So I started peeling the onion on it. Well, then I had a guy contact me who lives in Vermont, and you may remember Vermont just had this record flooding and this crazy weather. And he sends me a message, and it's like, hey, can we talk? And I was like, yeah, okay. He asked me, hey, listen, can you do me a favor? And just he has a lot of high connections, right? But he just did, and I helped him with all the research on it. If you go over to the disclosurehub.com, it's a thing called Kim or Con, okay? And he just did, it was like almost a 2-hour special on chemtrails. And it's super, like I said, super nice guy. And I gave him all the data that he needed. And then as I'm researching the data for him, I thought, I'm not going to find anything. And my initial response to him was, I can't find really anything particular to what you were looking for. And then I found the NOAA flights that I haven't looked at in a long time. And I started going, wait a second, let me do the research, because now I got Skyglass. I can run this in Skyglass and see what I get. I pull it into Skyglass, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy smokes, look at this. These guys aren't even trying to hide it. And then somebody sends me an article in the middle of all of this, not knowing I'm doing the research, because I didn't even tell you I was doing this kind of research.
Right.
And they send me an article and they go, here's this NOAA flight. Give me a tail number. And I think it's like N817NA or something, right? And they go, we caught it on camera spraying pink stuff out of the aircraft. Now, you're not talking to low altitude, you know, doing a firebomb run where the pink stuff comes out. I'm talking high altitude, real thin mist that comes out. Caught it on camera. So then I pull that flight, and that's the first video that you saw where I showed you all of the stuff that they were doing over those two areas. And now the data has been wiped. And I'm like, it's a smoking gun. They've got their hands caught in the cookie jar, so to speak. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? This is pretty real. Now, I still think most of what we see up there are contrails, but I will say, with respect to these folks, they're dirty, and it's crazy, man. That's all I can say. I'm now a believer, not to the degree that I'm like everything I see up there's chemtrails because I know better, but I can tell the difference between the two. And now I am like I said, I'm like I've flipped. Here's the other piece too. When I was researching it, I started finding out that there are senators that have brought forth bills. 1973, there was one that was presented to Congress that basically, where they set up a subcommittee, they set up funding, they set up all these different avenues to do weather modification. The military was actually testing this same type of technology on hurricanes. Go figure. And then they went silent with it all. But there's been several bills that have come before Congress about weather modification. And then the latest one was actually a senator in Illinois who tried to block it. He tried to ban weather modification in the state of Illinois and got it pushed all the way forward. And then they said, nah, not so fast. And they killed it. And so, yeah.
And they did that. And when they killed it, by the way, this is something a lot of people don't know. They killed it in the name of the preservation of national security. Mm-hmm. So them killing that was at the hands of the Department of Defense. And here's something that people don't know about NOAA, right? Because people don't think about this. When they look at NOAA, they think that it's probably related somehow to where NASA is tied to. But here's this. How's this for funny? NOAA is under the purview. Listen to this. This is interesting. Of the United States Department of Commerce. People don't know that. And what's even weirder about that is that NOAA assists the Department of Defense in military operations, preparing for weather-related issues to develop strategy for things like launches, flights. It affects everything. It affects space operations. If you don't believe me, sit down and talk to the folks at SpaceX that will tell you that they have people that are in their operation that are direct liaisons to NOAA. Right? Yeah. So now the Department of Commerce is actually running the game. Now, this is why it's important to make this connection, because I really want to touch up on this. Do you remember a while ago, Monkey, when we actually talked about the discussion of them wanting to ban TikTok, right?
Yeah.
And there was legislation that they are trying to put in the books, which has stalled, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to end.
Right.
But in the legislation, remember this, I want to remind everybody of this. There is one administrator, it's one, nobody else, who would actually make the decision whether or not we allow that certain social media company to be able to operate in networks in the United States of America. In this law that's being written, there is one person that is supposed to be appointed to being the administrator to make that determination. Do you know who it is?
Let's hear it.
The head of the United States Department of Commerce.
Imagine that. Below radar, man.
So now we are going to tie in one of the most significant functions of United States military and clandestine operations to the Department of Commerce. And on top of that, we are now going to begin to give the ability to throttle information related to that stuff to them. Yeah. Who do you think you would want to have that information available to you right away to make that kind of decision? You wouldn't want somebody at the FBI having that capability. You wouldn't want somebody at DOD making that decision, because look at how long it would take to be able to get that to move. When you start talking about what happened in January in 2020, we'll just have to leave it that way, right? Mm-hmm. You'd be blown away to find out how long the DOD purposefully stalled to authorize to the existing Capitol Police Chief any assistance on the military end, right? Yeah. Even though the grounds for legally establishing posse comitatus and defeating those issues were already there. Those men were legally and viably allowed to be sworn in as law enforcement officers to protect the function of security at the Capitol.
Yeah.
But they didn't want that to happen. So now you know what they're thinking. They're not going to give that decision to the DOD. They don't want any of the Joint Chiefs to start fighting over something, and then all of a sudden you have a different problem when the defense secretary, flips out. Imagine if the DNI or somebody else in the CIA or any of these other deep state operators decide they want to put a stop on something contrary to the wishes of a particular operation that's taking place at the hand of the Commerce Department. Bro, do you understand the fact, you understand this, but most people don't. Do you understand the fact that the way appropriations go forth for the economics that drive the Department of Commerce significantly can be modified because the stipulations for how appropriations take place from within that department are significantly different from how it works with the DOD. So now you have an extension of a potential military operation that can, in 5 seconds, shut off the First Amendment for most Americans in the name of covering up an operation that will dramatically affect the quality of life of any American in whose region it actually sits. Yeah. Do people understand how big of a deal this is?